All righty. Okay, right. So quick test. Please can everybody give me a thumbs up if everyone can hear and see the presentation slides before we get started? Great, great, great.
Fine.
Let's get started then. Good afternoon to everyone. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Hiresh Ramanand, CropLife SA Stewardship Specialist. I trust everyone is well. Welcome to today's webinar titled The Major Hazard Installation, or better known as MHI regulations, and what this means for the pesticide industry. While this session is scheduled for 2 hours, we should be done before that, provided there are no glitches. CropLife SA members registered on the CPD system can thereafter complete the very easy assessment loaded in category 3 of the CPD system. Now, this is going to be a little bit different compared to my previous webinars. I will be sharing this session with Quaid Singh Jam, who's CropLife South Africa's compliance specialist. While I will provide brief notes on theory aspects, Quaid will highlight how to practically tackle these complex regulations on the ground. Finally, I do apologize if I drop off for a minute or two, given network issues in my area. If that happens, please allow me a few minutes to get back online. With that said, let's hope everything runs smoothly. Fingers crossed. Okay, in terms of content, the webinar will start with a brief introduction. The focus will then shift to the scope and key components of the regulations. Under key components, the definition of MHI, risk assessment, safety management systems, notification and reporting obligations, emergency planning, and finally, training and competence will be touched on. The following section will focus on the relevance of the MHI regulations in the context of pesticide warehouses and depots, of which will be accompanied by a risk-based example. The way forward, offenses and penalties, as well as closing remarks from myself will also be covered. Quaid will then take over once I am done, where he will cover the MHI application and approval process, post-approval, and finally issues, constraints, and challenges. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. Okay, so the updated major hazard installations regulations were promulgated in 2022 and was subsequently published and became implementable from 31 January 2023. This means that the 2001 regulations have since been repealed. In a nutshell, the MHI regulations of 2023 establish a framework aimed at managing the risks associated with installations that handle hazardous substances. These regulations are critical for ensuring safety in industries where hazardous materials are stored, processed, or used, such as pesticide warehouses and depots. These regulations are particularly relevant for pesticide warehouses and depots where storage and handling of potentially dangerous chemicals pose risks to both human health and the environment. This webinar will explore the key components of the MHI regulations, the implications for pesticide storage, and includes a simple risk-based assessment example to illustrate their application. Following on from me, and as I noted at the start, Quaid will take over and provide everyone who has dialed in today with the practical overview. In other words, he will provide the blueprint on how one can go about tackling these regulations on the ground to ensure compliance as applicable. In terms of the scope, these regulations apply to major hazard installations, establishments with the prescribed quantity of substances listed in Chapter 1 and 2 of the regulations, respectively, as well as low, medium, and high hazard establishments. Moving on to key components, let's start with the definition of MHI. The definition of MHI regulations defines facilities as major hazard installations if they store or handle hazardous substances above specified thresholds as per the quantities listed in Chapter 1 and 2. And this is something Quaid will provide a practical example of, so rest easy for now, everyone. Importantly for today, this classification also includes warehouses and depots dealing with pesticides, as I have noted, which often contain flammable, toxic, and environmentally harmful substances. Now, comprehensive risk assessment requirements are central to the MHI regulations. Facilities must identify potential hazards, evaluate the risks associated with them, and determine the necessary control measures to mitigate these risks. This process includes analyzing chemical properties, potential accident scenarios, and the effectiveness of existing safety protocols. It is very important to note that comprehensive risk assessments must be conducted by a certified risk consultant assessor. Now, operators are also mandated to develop a safety management system, commonly referred to as SMS in this context, that also incorporates policies and procedures for hazard identification and risk, emergency preparedness and response, training and competency of personnel, monitoring and reviewing safety practices. In essence, the SMS serves as a structured approach to managing safety in facilities handling hazardous substances. Facilities identified as MHIs must notify the relevant authorities of their status and report any incidents that pose safety risks. While Quaid will go into details pertaining to the relevant authorities, this requirement ensures regulatory oversight and prompt action in case of emergencies. In terms of the emergency planning, the MHI regulations stipulate the necessity for an emergency plan that outlines response procedures for various incidents, such as chemical spills or fires, where regular drills and reviews of the emergency plan are essential to ensure preparedness. Now, with regard to training and competence, all personnel working in MHIs must receive adequate training related to the hazards present in their work environment, emergency response procedures, and the use of personal protective equipment or PPE. This serves to ensure staff are equipped to handle emergencies effectively. Right. Now let's take a somewhat deeper look into the relevance of the MHI regulations to pesticide warehouses and depots. As all of you would have gathered, pesticide warehouses and depots are particularly susceptible to the risks outlined in the MHI regulations due to the hazardous nature of the substances stored. Key considerations involve, firstly, the hazardous nature of the pesticides, which involves certain pesticide formulations being highly toxic, flammable, and harmful to the environment. Their storage in significant quantities necessitates stringent safety measures to prevent accidents that could have severe consequences for human health and ecological systems. To reiterate here, Quaid will give a practical outline of what is meant by significant quantities. Now, secondly, compliance with environmental regulations in addition to the MHI regulations remains paramount to prevent soil and water contamination. The MHI framework supports this compliance by mandating risk assessments and emergency planning that take environmental impacts into account. Now, when it comes to the requirements for an EIA and an MHI, this appears to be a major issue regarding the interpretation. Again, Quaid will provide absolute clarity regarding this when he takes over. Thirdly, pesticide facilities are required to implement engineering controls, such as secondary containment systems, for example, bunding, underground sump, as well as administrative controls, of which include standard operating procedures or SOPs, in order to effectively manage risk. Right, let's move on to the risk-based assessment example. Let's consider the following scenario: the potential spill of hazardous pesticides. To give all of you some background here, we have a pesticide warehouse storing multiple types of herbicides and insecticides, of which are classified as toxic and flammable. During a recent risk assessment commissioned by the employer or duty holder as referred to in the regulations, the facility identified a potential risk, a leaking storage container that could lead to significant spillage. Now, following the risk assessment, it was revealed that the leaking container posed a moderate risk due to its age and the corrosive nature of the pesticides. The likelihood of a leak occurring was rated as medium, while the potential impact on both human health and the environment was considered high. In terms of control measures, this included secondary containment systems. However, they were found to be inadequate, not properly maintained. So the risk assessment prompted the depot to establish a regular maintenance schedule and to upgrade the containment systems in order to enhance spill prevention. Regarding the emergency plan, the existing plan was found to lack specific procedures for responding to a pesticide spill. The risk assessment led to a revision of the plan to include clear steps for containment, cleanup, and communication with local authorities, along with designated roles for staff. For the training and following the risk assessment, additional sessions were implemented to adequately educate staff on the new emergency procedures and the proper use of PPE. Simulated spill response drills were undertaken to reinforce these practices. Shortly after implementing the measures, a minor spill occurred due to a malfunctioning valve. But thanks to proactive planning and training, the incident was contained swiftly, minimizing environmental impact and ensuring the safety of personnel. Now, in terms of the way forward, for a new major hazard installations or establishments, implementation is required immediately upon regulations being in force, which, as you will all know, was 31 January 2023. Now, when it comes to existing MHIs or establishments, this is split into 3 phases. Phase 1 requires having an emergency plan in place 12 months upon promulgation of the regulations following a risk-based assessment, which means this had to be in place as of 31 January 2024. Phase 2 requires the MHI or establishment to be registered by 31 January 2025, where a 24-month period has been granted. Finally, Phase 3 allows 36 months for implementation of technical requirements based on the outcomes of the risk-based assessment, of which needs to be in place by 31 January 2026. Now, a duty holder or employer who contravenes the MHI regulations is liable to a fine not exceeding 5 million or imprisonment not exceeding 24 months. In terms of the contraventions, for first-time offenders with no previous contraventions over a 5-year period, the maximum fine payable is 500,000. Why a 5-year period? Well, the Department of Employment and Labor is not oblivious to the fact that the process will be costly, resulting in financial implications for business. Now, should the inspector come back within 12 months, depending on what was agreed to in terms of remedial steps and time required to address the first contravention, let's consider bunding, for example, and where nothing was done, then one can expect to cough up 1 million. Should the issue not be rectified within 3 years upon the return of the inspector, then the fine jumps to 2.5 million. Importantly, should there be 3 contraventions which are not addressed within 3 years, the inspector will throw the book at you for all contraventions, resulting in a hefty 5 million rand fine. I think most of you will have figured that this method works on a cumulative system, with the key takeaway being that remedial steps are taken to mitigate the risks of the findings. So in closing from my side, it should be clear to everyone that the MHI regulations of 2023 are crucial for managing the risks associated with pesticide warehouses and depots. By mandating thorough risk assessments, the development of safety management systems, and comprehensive emergency planning, these regulations aim to protect human health and the environment from the dangers posed by hazardous substances, to which I have alluded to throughout this presentation. The risk-based assessment example illustrates the importance of adhering to these regulations, which demonstrates how proactive measures can effectively mitigate risks and enhance safety in facilities where pesticides are stored and handled. And with that, I will now hand over to Kwait Singh Jam, who I'm sure all of you are eagerly waiting to hear from, because he is going to put forward a blueprint on how to tackle this very complex set of regulations on the ground. Quaid, please go ahead and share your slides.
Thank you, Rish, and welcome everybody. And you seem to have a lot of faith in me today, but we will try. Okay. Can I just get a thumbs up there from everybody that they can see my slide? I can't see from here because I'm in a presentation mode. But okay. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting right at the beginning of our establishment, whether it's an established warehouse, a planned warehouse, or any facility, manufacturing facility. And when it comes to the MHI application, your local government or the authorities will look at various factors on the facility or upon your application. And as I've got it over here, so the authority or the local government has the authority to prevent a new MHI to be erected at a separation distance less than what poses to be a risk. And the risks that they are looking for, especially are airports, which is the fly zones. If there's a neighboring and existing but independent MHI facility already in the area, residential and other centers of population, in other words, malls, clinics, schools, and then other similar facilities which came to being, which is now frail homes or frail cares and facilities like that are taken in consideration more evenly so. And then also, of course, all waterways. And please, waterways is water channels, intertidal zone, wetlands, all of those waterlands or water falls under waterways, sorry, and would be considered as such. Local government must also prevent a proposed MHI facility from being erected to existing facility. And the reason why that regulation is like that, an MHI has been done for an existing facility. And let me just use a sort of example now. So this facility manufactures glue. Let's call it Prit, for example. And please, Prit, don't sue me, but they have done the MHI, they have done the EIA for this facility, and right next door to them, we want to open up another facility and we want to refine, let's call it HFO, heavy fuel oil, for example, and we want to extract some of the um, fuel from it and to refine it. So immediately that poses a risk or a danger to the existing facility because of the proximity and because of the volatility of the product that we are planning or wanting to produce. So those are the factors that would be then taken into consideration with this. I need to stress, and I want to start this process right at the beginning for everyone else. And I mean, we have started off, I think I joined last year, and I think the previous year before that, CropLife South Africa has embarked on the SANS 10206 campaign with all our members, ensuring that our facilities that we have, that the local authority has approved it, and we approval as in the facility itself, the location itself, and then that the current facilities that we have, or the existing facilities that we are going, or the new facility as well, I can also add. The building sites are approved. We are in possession of a certified or certificate of occupancy. The zoning has been done properly, so the area is zoned for noxious or for industrial use or for warehousing. And then in some areas where the bylaws are different, there is a license to trade. So I need to go into the SANS 10206 because if these facilities of ours do not have these facilities or these basic principles in place, your MHI won't be granted because you need to start off right at the beginning again. And just the first step that I want to go into, and this is our SANS 10206, and unfortunately for those of you that know this, I need to stress this again because it is currently still lacking in our industry. And the point that I want to focus on, if I can just get my pointer out here quickly. So I'm looking at the very first point over here. When identifying the specific land use rights you are seeking, consider the long-term objective of your property and your business. In other words, don't think on now, I've got a small facility, that is good and fine, but there is future growth because if you're going to have to do this, it's going to cost you. And that is what we're saying. Source a proper facility, source a proper piece of property that you want to develop. And then are you planning to develop a residential complex, an established commercial establishment, and to engage or are you going to engage in agricultural activities? So those are the other factors that you need to know and the appropriate category of the land that you're going to be using. So the storage and distribution of pesticide is not an agricultural facility, and I need to stress this. This is storage and warehousing. It is a product that is used in the agricultural sector, but it's not agricultural. Okay, I just want to go there. Sorry, I'm just going to skip a few of these because I just want to get to the pertinent points of 10206. You'll see in 10206 there is talk of the EIA, everybody knows that, the Environmental Impact Assessment. And the reason why I'm bringing this up because there's a big confusion still between an EIA and the MHI. And I will explain the differences once I get into that as well. So, depending on the nature of your land use, an environmental impact assessment may be required to evaluate the potential ecological consequences. And please, the EIA has got to do with ecological consequences. And this also takes in consideration regulations and mitigation on the adverse effect it will have on the surroundings or environment of that particular area that you've identified. Just let me admit this person because it's on my slide. Okay. Within SANS 10206, and this is the latest edition of 2020, edition 3, I'm going to look at Annex E, and this one talks specifically about the storage of pesticides in distribution. And that is the bulk of our industry at the present moment. What I want to go to is E2. This step over here is very important. Early consultation with the relevant authorities is recommended, as in the provision of an adequate brief covering the intended use of the premises and the goods intended to be stored. In this way, the necessary permits, such as flammable liquid permits, can be applied for in good time, and the need to apply costly additional measures, such as fire measurements or safety measurements after the premise or otherwise, for the occupation can be avoided. So, first and foremost, know what you want to do, know why you want the facility, and then engage with the local authority. Local authority, in this case that we are referring to, would be your fire chief, but I will come back to that in a minute when I do go over into the MHI slide. Why am I doing this? Because, ladies and gentlemen, I've been through an MHI, I've been actually through three MHIs, and the basic requirement starts off with your SANS 10206. And the most important part that they will be looking for is this section, your site location. So these are the quotes straight out of the SANS code. I didn't change it. I don't want to change it because the crux of the messages is lying within these few slides over here. A company, organization, or an individual, and I'm going to say an individual because we have big crop advisors that have big facilities as well. When applying for approval to set up or to extend a pesticide distribution store, shall undertake an environmental impact assessment, and in doing so, take the following into account. The nature of the goods to be stored, and I've highlighted that because the nature of the goods, as Resh alluded to in chapter 1 and 2, plays an important part. However, there is a different calculation done in the EIA versus the MHI. Please take into account if there are any crop advisors on board or any big distributor warehousing or distributors on this call. Please take in account your seasonal variations and use your most inflated or peak period, as we call it, volumes, your biggest volumes that you would have. In a normal day to day out of season, you would be sitting, say, with 30,000 liters in your store. But when it comes to peak period, you might triple that or you may double that. So use your inflated figure that you are going to be using for that. Right. Site locations, waterways, please. And as I said in the beginning, in the opening statement, the waterways is one of the predominant and one of the key factors that they are looking for. Proximity to the water courses at the surface and underground, and open stormwater canals. Measures should be taken to prevent any contamination from entering a natural water causeway. Right? Proximity to combustible vegetation. In other words, you're situated in an area, in a rural area where there is a bushed area. And the reason why we take that into consideration is because of fire. Your prevailing winds and other climatic factors. Within the MHI, especially on point G, prevailing winds and other climatic factors, there is a necessity and a requirement for you to ask for your wind pattern or your wind rows over a 12-month period. So please have that handy. They will request for you a wind rose to see what is your dominant and prevailing winds. Why is this done? Because they want to see the direction that the wind would be blowing for. If it's going over a residential area, or is it going over into a biological or organic farm? I'm just using now the very worst case scenarios now. And they will consider that for your MHI or your facility in this case as well. Please note the highest recorded flood level for that floodplain or that specific area that you are wanting to develop or wanting to build a new warehouse or extend your warehouse. So these are the factors that need to be considered on this. Okay. I'm not going to go into depth in that because, as I said, this is available to you. It's on the sands, and please choose wisely, and please consider the core of your output or of your business that you want to achieve before you decide on what you want to build or to develop. Right. That is the SANS 10206. The environmental impact assessment or the EIA on NEMA, public health and safety. I'm just going to touch very briefly on this because we've all been through this as well. Okay. The environment. Please, environment, we are looking at all terrestrial, aquatic, and marine biodiversity. Whether you inland, coastal, rural areas, these are the factors that would be considered or taken into account for. People, and this is now, as I said, start again, health and safety, sense of place, value, skills development, resources, livelihoods, and human settlement as well. Economy wise, will it be a contributing factor? Will it lead to developing the rural areas or the facilities that you've got there? Right? Sustainability of that, is there mitigation, risk avoidance, and then obviously the public participation. What I want to get to is I want to go straight down into this diagram, and please tell me if you can just give me a thumbs up if you guys can see this clearly. I don't know if I can make it any larger, but this is your basic assessment process that is done on your EIA and the amount of days that it's taken to do it. You're looking from anything from 190 days for a full EIA. In the scope of this EIA, your MHI will follow the same process where you've got, and I just want to get my pointer here again. Oh, come on. Okay. So if you can see, the first top tab you will start is with the scoping and investigation. And that is where you will start with your MHI as well. You will submit your application, and on your application, then you will start with your state inspections, the reports, your public participation, draft scoping reviews, and updates. So all of these will be taken into consideration before there is a final approval given for your facility then to proceed on your MHI facility. Right. I'm just going to go to the next slide. The accounting officer is overall in charge of the municipal system, and this is the financial officer or whoever's in charge of, and it differs from metro to metro. And this person would then delegate your application to the fire emergency services, which is the fire chief. Within, as we saw with your EIA, your fire chief is the most important person in the local authority of your metropole because he will drive your EIA and your MHI application. He is the custodian of all the risk assessment reports and the MHI application process. He also chairs the MHI task team, and he also delegates, or if there's questions of clarity, he will address it through the task team and the task team members that will fulfill these roles. He then also ensures that the submission in line with all the regulations and that all required information is attached when you do that. So it complies with the interim code relating to the fire prevention and to flammable liquid substances as well, and complies with the relevant SANS codes of practice. And that is why I went back to explain and brought in the SANS 10206, which would be the driving code for the warehousing facilities. Okay. Everybody doing fine so far, and everybody can hear me still clearly, eh? So if there is a question, please just pop it in the chat, and then we can take it from there. So the MHI technical task team consist of but not limited to, and please, this differs from each metropole from one from another. As I said, the fire emergency services, which would be your fire chief, is the custodian of the process. Your local disaster management unit, so each metropole has a disaster management unit, and they're the custodians of the off-site emergency as well as the disaster management plan, right? Because your disaster management plan that you propose would fall in within that disaster cluster, because they will cluster the groups into the various industrial zones together to have that response team allocated to that. Environmental health unit, which is in basically DFFE, town planning and development manager, the custodian of land use management, water services, and this is all water services. This is from stormwater, water supply, emergency supply for fire as well. And then the various governmental departments or inspectors, and this is as and when required for fact finding and clarification. Right? What does this task team do? So the task team, first of all, scrutinizes your application that has been received. They will go through your application and they will vet your application, and they will say, listen, you need to add more detail, be specific. Don't tell me I'm the storage of chemicals. What you want to store, what chemicals are you storing? You need to be specific, you need to give details, you need to give your actual figures or the best estimated figures and products that you are going to be storing or manufacturing or using at that facility. The official responsible for the area concerned deals with the application and reports to the task team whether his or her unit requirements. So these are specific unit requirements pertaining to these here at the top, pertaining to your fire and emergency, your disaster plan, the environment, the town planning. If there's any findings over here within your application, they will address it and send it back to you. So that correspondence will come directly to you, or if you are working then with your MHI approved inspection authority, or you've got an EIA engineer, that is the person who's handling this on your behalf. Because please, ladies and gentlemen, I would advise you to get an MHI engineer or person to do that, because it is quite complex to do these calculations yourself. And I will explain and I will show you in the examples as well how complex and difficult this gets, because I mean, I'm being honest, up to this day there's some of these calculations that I practically and physically cannot do. Right. Prior to the recommendation for approval, the application must satisfy then all the unit requirements. You can't have something outstanding in one of these units and expect to move on to the next phase. It will not happen. Like Aresh has brought in the 5 year period. So you've got this 5 year period where you can conclude any findings, or as they call it, units. But you will not move on beyond that. You need to complete the entire scope or the finding. Right. All applications must comply with the MHI regulation or any other relevant legislative requirements. The any other legislative requirements are all your metro bylaws, and I've got it in red here at the bottom as well, because this is very important. Don't say I have done everything and we have done everything on your checklist and on your MHI. What is the issue? The issue could be that there's a specific bylaw that you don't comply with. You need to prove or to show your mitigation, what you've done, and how you're going to mitigate any of those findings. Okay. So therefore, again, I stress this, that each unit requirements must be met. Product specific analysis. And this is the big problem, ladies and gentlemen, for all of us. And as I said, and I'm being very honest with you, don't kick me, or you can kick me, I'm far away, I won't feel it. These calculations are very, very specific and they are very, very complex. As I said, and I'm being honest, up to this day, I still can't do some of these calculations. I've tried, and yeah, my kop is te plat or something of the sort, but I can't get these calculations done. That is why I would advise you to please get a approved inspection authority or a MHI engineer to do this. And I'm going to show you the example of one of these things. So these calculations are product specific. So please, all your products that you have in the store will not be taken in consideration as an EIA that would do the total volume. This is individual volume and taken over the total volume to be stored as well. The reason for this is the total individual volumes of specific products and the respective classes, toxicity levels, the volatility or flash points differs, and each of these will be taken into consideration. I just want to get out of my presentation here, and then I want to open up. Where did I put this now? Just let me stop sharing there for a minute while I just open up this document here. Okay, I'm going to share. And I am over here. Yes, there is a hand up there. Let me go. Yeah. Okay. Guys, I'm looking at ammonium nitrate and the fertilizer based one. On this table that you got within your MHI, you'll get your UN number, which is in the first column, and then quantities in tons or your volumes in tons that you are currently storing within your warehouse would trigger your MHI threshold. So if you've got ammonium nitrate, and this is the fertilizer based one that we're looking at. So if you got 2,000 tons, that would be considered as a low hazard. And if you go up to 5,000 tons, that would be considered a medium hazard. And then you got up to 10,000, that will go up to a high hazard. Okay, so that is just your normal ammonium nitrate fertilizer. In that plain scenario, there is nothing wrong with it. However, if you would take potassium nitrate and you would add that to your store, the ratio on these calculations differ because the first one that they are going to be looking at, what is the current ambient temperature that is in your facility at the present moment or where you are staying. Okay, so they want to know what is the vapor that gets released under that particular temperature and that degrees Celsius, right? So they say the mixtures of gas and liquids have a vapor in excess of zero point 0.5 bars above atmospheric pressure when in equilibrium with the vapor of that specific product. And they need to know what is that equilibrium for the same product that you are keeping at 20 degrees, 25 degrees, 36 degrees, or then at 14 degrees in some areas we have -1 or -2. So they want to know what is the calculation on each and every one of those things, and how do the products interact with each other on those volumes and on those calculations. Taking one product, and if this product is a gas product, they would also take into consideration what is the pressure that exerted on that particular gas at an absolute 8 bar pressure and the heat associated with it. They would also consider toxicity of the product, which just comes back again to the chapter 1 and 2 of that, where they would like to know. And then at 20 degrees Celsius or more, the saturation of the vapors combined within the entire store. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can't do these calculations. There's a big, and I want to scroll down to this formula. There's a big formula here at the bottom that totally confuses my mind, and I don't want to confuse all of you and wanting for you to know this. But if you guys know that, please, you can come and teach me, because I really do not know this formulation from a bar of soap. And I just want to scroll all the way down to the bottom, because it is a huge calculation that is done with X, Y, and Z. And I will most probably, this is the explanation of the actual percentages and weights and the combustion factors that is taken into consideration. And this is the ammonium nitrate. This example is in the MHI regulation. So if you guys want to have a look at it, it is there. This is the calculations here at the bottom. And then here is a big, nice formula that I really don't know how to calculate it. So there are your calculations, and those are your formulas. And you can see this comes back to what erases falls in the chapter 1 and 2. Okay, so please, the best advice over here is to get a definite engineer to assist you with these calculations and with that. Okay, I'm just want to go back into my presentation again over here. Okay, is there okay? So please, both individual and societal risk must be acceptable or tolerable. And as I said, please note the bylaws and standards applicable to your region, because this may differ from the Western Cape to KZN and to Gauteng, Eastern Cape, wherever. So there are different bylaws applicable there. MHA task team then collectively visits the site to ensure the recommendations made by the engineer or inspector body that you are getting in the report are implemented. Once the application meets all the requirements and all your units have been covered and this task team is happy, the task team recommends this application for approval. Please, this is just your application that is going for approval, right? The head fire and engineering services, or the fire chief, is the final person that would actually approve your application. Okay. Going into the approval of your application, the most important one that they would definitely concentrate on, you ladies and gentlemen, is your disaster management plan. They need to know that you have a disaster management plan that you, and as Resh has pointed out, that your plan has been tested. And then they would look at your fire suppression system, because you need to submit your fire suppression drawings and plans, whether you're having um, tanks, because some of our municipal pressures are not up to par. Remember, some of the pipes that were built, some of them are still the old 50 millimeter spec, well, where the bigger ones are now up to 80 and to 120 spec, some of the pipe requirements now in the facilities, and the pressure of the municipal is not that good. Therefore, you need to get additional pumps to give you that pressure for the water, or to put on foamers or whatever um, contingency fire plan that you want to put on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. They have approved your plan. So, and they have approved your MHI. Having done that, then your hard work only starts now. So, what they would do post and after approval. And this is the same task team. And out of this task team, there's emergency planning officers. I don't know if your metros has it, but our metro, we have a disaster cluster or disaster management team. And it normally consists out of your, not your fire chief, but your fire inspectors and the supervisors. And they would come out in conjunction with some of the inspectors from DFE or whatever, whoever they choose that day to do an inspection. And then they will conduct a yearly inspection to ensure that the site operates within the parameters set in that risk assessment that was done for your business. Why yearly? If we just take the current environment and the current developments that has happened now with our industry, so you all had chlorpyrifos within your stores, and you were sitting at the time that you did your risk assessment, each of you had about 20 to 30,000 liters of chlorpyrifos in your stores. With the ban coming in and the phase and the chlorpyrifos is phased out, it is taken out, that risk factor is not applicable to your store anymore. And that is why this point at the bottom, the continuous improvement plan, needs to address the chlorpyrifos issue. The evaluation on your in-site emergency plan, if there was anything particularly, if you had a flammable product, if you had, for example, if you stored petrol on your facility and you no longer have that, the on-site emergency plan needs to change because of the volatility and the flash point of the fuel. These needs to be adapted, and your fire response team, they need to know about these changes. Otherwise, they are still going to be coming rushing at your site with foamers and the whole tutti, and or inadequate um, fighting apparatus, because you have not told them now that you're having flammables within your store, right? The test on emergency plan annually, please, this needs to be done and it needs to be recorded. I can't stress this one enough. We had a plan with our fire and emergency services where we recorded our mock drills, and they were timed. From the time we placed the dummy call or the actual call to the fire department, and from the time one of the small fire trucks arrived on site, that was timed. And then also the simulation with the fire and emergency services on the containment of the product, if you had a spill or a leak or an actual fire or an evacuation drill. So please, these need to be timed and these need to be recorded. That forms part of your yearly inspection, and your emergency preparedness plan or your disaster management plan. Make recommendations to address any concerns or areas of concerns in the emergency plan. And that is why you have these drills. If something is not working properly, please address it and adjust your SOPs and adjust your processes and procedures so to iron out any hiccups and stuff. If your escape route that you have planned is not working out, there's too much congestion into entering or exiting the building at the south, try and looking at doing your exit through the west or through the east or to north. Right? The nearest exit is not always the safest exit. So please look at that and under the continuous improvement plan. And this is where your health and safety committee comes in with all your appointments. We were been had now in our compliance forum. We were addressing your competent person, your 16.2s, your 16.1 with your CEO. They need to endorse all these continuous improvement plans. They need to be aware of this. And not them, but all employees. It's no use just a handful of people get knows what's happening, and the day of the drill, everybody is running in a different direction. Okay, that is why we need to test these plans. Okay, nearly done. The constraints and challenges that you would have on your MHI. Right, the resistance to conduct MHI or the risk assessments of the MHI, ladies and gentlemen, the cost associated is steep. It is not a cheap exercise. The sorry about that. The engineers are few. They need to be booked well in advance. And an MHI or a risk assessment is not a once off where the gentleman would come in. He will spend basically a day or two or three, depending how big your facility is and depending on how many operations you have within your facility. And this is one thing that I want to talk about on this point over here within your operations of your facility. If you have a manufacturing plant, on your facility, you have a storage facility, you have a decanting facility, and then you still have a packaging facility and all of that. Those are different operational areas that plays within the risk assessment. Each different activity, including forklift driving, the type of forklift that you would use is the gas forklift, is the petrol forklift, is the diesel forklift. If you go and say you've got an electrical forklift, good and well, but the risk associated with your battery charging area, how are you charging it? Are they charged inside or outside your facilities? All of these factors are contributing factors to these costs associated with it. Right? Lack of education program for the members of the public and communities. And I want to combine this point and this point together, the lobby groups and the activists. So I want to put up a storage facility and I want to keep 100,000 liters of paraquat in there. I'm just using it now and this is a kilometer or 500 meters away from an informal settlement. It costs one person to say that, yes, I'm poisoning everybody. And the members of the public jumped on this bandwagon that, yes, now the cattle are dying, the children are dying, and the lobby groups and the activists get involved. Once this action happens, it delays your entire process because this will form part of your public participation. And once you have the lobby groups within that public participation and they are throwing objections left, right, and center, you can surely expect a delay from up to 24 months or more with your MHI being granted. And that is why I said right in the beginning, if I go right to the front again, make sure of the facility that you are choosing or the area that you are choosing, that it is zoned properly and it is within the proper noxious zone or industrial zone for these operations. Another point, and please, I'm not pointing any fingers and I'm not talking badly of the municipalities, but ladies and gentlemen, the lack of knowledge and specialized expertise within our municipality areas also, for they are also being misled. Some of our municipal administrators are not so afraid with some of our regulations, and they make up their own rules and regulations that is not even prescribed within the regulations. I mean, we all know that. I mean, we have the issues now regarding, and I'm going to use the Act 15, the red labels, and they look at the GSH labels and they say, oops, guys, but where are your red labels? Okay, so those factors also needs to be considered and they need to be addressed. The MHI that was in operational prior to the proclamation of the regulations. So the rules were very stringent right in the beginning, and they relaxed, and now it has become now again much more stringent with regards to the proclamation of the regulation, because what they are doing, they are taking an holistic view of all products within your store and all the regulations that is applicable to your operations now. So you need to please consider that and have a look at that, okay? And then the companies, we do not understand the MHI and risk assessment process. Servitude encroachment, excuse me, guys. Sorry, I was trying to mute here for a while. Just give me a second quickly, please. Sorry, guys, I do apologize for that. I thought it was going well, but yes, we're still all recovering as well. So, servitude encroachment. So, guys, encroachment on environmental land, encroachment on rural areas, encroachment on waterways, all of these factors are being considered and they are constraints for your MHI. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is my presentation in a nutshell. I am going to be taking questions and answers to discuss and to answer you more on the practical side of these. As I said, and please hear me out, there is not one size fits all regulation here. I cannot say is applicable for me is going to be the same for you, because the composition of your inventory in your warehouse differs. So there is no blueprint that I can give you and say, this is it. If you follow this to the T, you're going to get your MHI, because that is not going to happen because of your composition of your products and the ratios that is influence upon the volumes of each product. So please, that needs to be understood and needs to be considered. I also want to just come back to the fines that Haresh was talking about earlier about. You've got a 5 year period from day one. So day one starts off where they will come into your facility and you need to engage with the local authorities and tell them, right, I think I am now on the threshold that my facility would actually trigger an MHI. They would come in on day one and let us just please use this practically. And they said, listen, Mr. Singjam, you are now in breach because of your volumes and stuff, and there is inadequate bunding or you have no bunding at all. You need to please address your bunding. Over and above the bunding, your fire suppression system is inadequate because of the volumes. You need to up it. And so I've got 3 or 4 findings. The inspectorates or the task team of the department won't fine me immediately my 500,000. That 500,000 without any previous conviction or any contravention is there for the first time, and we will come to a mutual agreement. Please give me 3 months or 6 months or whatever the case may be so that I may do the necessary remedial steps. And that is where the engineering part comes in. Rebuild everything and they are going to be happy. Okay? If you don't do that, they've come back after 6 months and they said, but okay, remember, this is by mutual agreement. You've agreed to this. You have done nothing. You need to explain or justify, and they're not happy with it. They will slap you with that 500K. They will walk away because you're still within your 5 year period. But when it comes to 12 months and they come back, which is now their annual inspection for you, because remember, you've triggered this. It's a voluntary where you've addressed it. Don't let them walk in there and do the calculation and find out that you're wanting, because that is a different um, contravention of the law. They will then say on year 2, oh, so you have done nothing. When it comes to year 5 and you've done absolutely nothing, and they still find that your volumes are exceeding the threshold, your products that you've got has now actually increased, there is a definitive decision that can be taken to close down your entire facility. Because now you are operating an MHI facility illegally and knowingly so. So that is just the extra part that I wanted to bring in here. So please be very careful when you want to do an EIA and you are going to address your findings. Do so. Stick within the time frames that is given to you or that you have agreed to, please. If you cannot meet the deadline, it is your responsibility to inform the authorities. I'm sorry, may I have an extension because of X, Y, and Z? They will not say no. So please engage with your local authorities, especially the fire chief, and make him your best friend and speak to him and explain to them in depth. Okay. I'm going to open the floor for questions. Maresh, are you still there? I also just want to make mention that we have the templates for disaster management plans, and I think Dr. Verdoring will also be presenting or doing a webinar with regards to that. I'm just going to stop sharing at the present moment and just get back into the facility. Okay. The first hand is up there. I don't know, Resh, are you here with me? Are we both on?
Yes, Quade. All questions need to be typed into the chat box, Quade.
Okay. Right. Right. So I see this is Crystal. Crystal, can you please type your question? I see your hand is up. Could you please type your question in the chat box? And for anyone else as well, if there's any questions, please do type it in. Guys, I just want to mute quickly. I just want to drink some water just to get this frog out of my throat quickly. Okay, so explain what the role of the 16.2 appointee is in this regard. So the 16.2 would be then your appointed person from your company. The CEO would appoint you 16.2, and he will act on behalf of the company. Doc, so it is a competent person, and this person has both the knowledge and working and experience to recognize the hazards and then the authority to correct it. So, as part of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, this is the person that would be responsible within your organization or in your company that addresses all of these findings and the person that drives all your risk assessments to ensure compliance to the regulations. I don't know if Crystal is still on. Crystal, you need to type your question in the chat box, please, sir. Are there any other questions? I don't know if anybody can hear me still.
We can hear you fine, Quaid. I don't see any
Oh.
more activity in the chat box.
Mm,
Okay, I see Christo has lowered his hand.
okay. Just a question from my side. If you can give me a show of hands, have any of you embarked or started off with your MHI as yet? Hello? Nobody? Okay. Okay. Yes, your MHI and your EIA can run concurrently. You would first have to start off with your EIA because on your EIA, they will first do the environmental risk assessment. And why is this important? Because even though you've identified a facility within a proper noxious zone or industrial zone area, and remember the zoning has been done 25 years, 30 years, or even 15 years ago. And in the meantime, there is a blue crested crane that moved into the area. So with the climatic changes, and the influx of various environmental, as I said, with these birds, and they've now decided to make this their home, those factors will be need to consider it first before you can actually start and go ahead and start building your MHI. The one thing that I wanted to say is your MHI is based on your Occupational Health and Safety Act, and your EIA is based on your NEMA regulations. Okay. Is there anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, how would you know? The question here is how would you know if a new species has moved in? And this is why you have your EIA, environmental impact assessor. They will actually do a censoring of the entire area. Um, I'm going to use a practical example where I am in Port Elizabeth. So We situated right along the coast. And what they did, they brought in all these wind farms. And they needed to do a study on the vibration of these wind farms and the impact it has for the birds that was moving into the area, and especially for the nesting birds. So we have an island just off the coast, and they are the African penguins, and they also found it was, and I'm talking under correction, Atlantic penguin, but this penguin was lost along the way. But it colonized itself within on this island as well, and that particular penguin needed to be assessed as well, and how that impact would be over and above the home colony as such. They look at the whales that is seasonal, that comes in for breeding, although it's not specific to that area, but during a specific season, your humpback whales would move in and they would consider those as well. Okay, so that is done with your EIA, everything to do with the environment, your assessor would do that. I hope that answers your question, Sonia. Thank you. Anyone else? Guys, really, I need to go back to that calculation of the products. Don't try and do it yourself. If you can, well, most probably most of you are cleverer than what I am on mathematical, with maths and stuff like that. But please, that is a crazy sum that you need to do, because you have to work out that ratio for each and every product that you are storing. If you've got 120 products, you need to do it for that full 120 products, for the lowest level and for the highest level, and then considering your three temperatures throughout the year. And then you will get to a base, and then you'll do your calculation on your peak volumes at your highest temperature. Am I allowed to pick on somebody and ask a question? Wouldn't a storeroom be hotter? Yeah. Okay, look, it depends on your storeroom, and this is what I wanted to talk about. If your storeroom, if you have whirly burlies on you have two whirly burlies in your store. And I don't know if, let's say, for example, you've got a 20 by 20 warehouse, and please, I'm just using this now for example. You've got a 20 by 20 warehouse, and you've got one whirly burly on there, and you're keeping 10,000 liters of flammable goods in there, and please, it's a certified flammable store. You have one store that's situated in Johannesburg, you have one store situated in Port Elizabeth, and you have one store situated in Kakamas. It is December, the 18th of December. Temperature in Port Elizabeth, average temperature would be around about 24, 25 degrees, and that is outside temperature. Gauteng, or let's say it's going to be 28 or 30. Kakamas, 42 degrees. Same scenario. So the effect the heat has on that product, the expansion rate of that product, and the fumes that is going to be given off, and the actual ambient heat within that warehouse are the factors that's going to be considered. Just remember, same product, same size warehouse, same everything, but your environmental factors are totally different. So yes, a storm room would be hotter, but that is where then they would ask you to please re-engineer. You need to put in automated venturis, and these are those louvers that open and close with that it's got a built-in thermometer. If the thing comes over, let's say 25 degrees Celsius, it would automatically open to allow a natural draft to go through the warehouse. Or you need to increase the number of whirly burlies you got. Or please change your doors. You need to offset the doors and stagger your doors so you have a cross flow throughout your warehouse to bring that temperature down. Okay, so those are the stuff that needs to be considered for your MHI, and these are the points that we said that the MHI engineer. Well, I call him the engineer because that is what they like to do. They like to re-engineer everything and then do the recommendations, and that is why it's costly. We're talking specifically warehousing here, but please, guys, these goes also for your manufacturing plants or processing facilities as well. I don't know if you, so in theory, it would be better to build a warehouse than rent. Yes, ma'am. Unless you have an agreement, and we've called it these green agreements or lease agreements with your landlord that would amortize everything, and you've got a rental agreement for the next 50 years, and you know you are not moving out of there. But please, you need to make sure that when you get this warehouse, that you are not encroaching, and that is that servitude, yet you're not encroaching on any other business facilities that would actually negatively impact. And one of the things, especially when it comes into industrial area, so you've got a pesticide warehouse here today, tomorrow your neighbor moves in and he's an engineering shop that does welding. Can you see how that would influence or offset that? So if you do pick a place where you know nobody can expand next to you. I know it's quite difficult, but these are the factors that needs to be considered. And please, you need to show, and it's not the thing that the department or the local authority is going to deny you. You just need to show that you are busy with improvements and you need to give them a detailed plan. That is just what they want. Give them the plan and stick to your time frames. As I said once again, if you can't maintain your time frames, go back to them and said, I need an extension, and explain to them what are the mitigating factors. What we always did, if halfway through any project, we invited them back just to give them that little bit of progress, and you build a better rapport with them and a trust relationship with them because you are engaging with them as well to see if you're on the right track. And I'm talking specifically about the MHI task team at this present moment in time. Okay. Anyone else? Is there any warehouse staff on this call? Anybody from supply chain? Anybody from the warehouse? No? Okay. Anybody wants to ask me a question?
Okay, Quaid. I see there's no more questions coming in, Quaid, and
Mm.
you have put up our details. Should anyone have more queries or would like to discuss their situation
Yeah.
in more detail, that's also welcomed. Can Members are welcome to sit with us and have a discussion around that.
Mm.
But yeah, I can't see any more questions, Quaid. And just to remind everybody on the CropLife SA CPD program that the assessment is loaded under category 3 on the CPD system. It's a very easy assessment. Well, the assessment's quite easy. I think what most of us have realized today is that the regulations are quite demanding in what they expect. And there's no two ways about it. One cannot get it done by themselves. You are going to need the help of experts in the field. It's going to be a costly affair, but at the end of the day, it's going to save you a lot of money on the bottom line should you be found wanting in terms of compliance. So just keep that in mind, everybody. And like we said, if anybody's struggling with this specific aspect regarding their storage facility, speak to us, and we can also refer all of you in the right direction as well. Because, like Quade said, as Quade mentioned, a lot of what we looked at in terms of the calculations just mind-boggling. So, yeah, clearly that's saying this is not for you. This is for an expert to do. So, with that being said, Quade, there's nothing more to add in from my side. I'll let you go ahead and close the webinar.
Okay. I'm also going to extend my assistance to all, and please do reach out to us. We've got also Dr. Verdoring that is with us on our stewardship side, the stewardship portfolio. Please, as I said, he is preparing a webinar for the disaster management plan, and please, this is not a one size fits all plan. And as I said, the MHI as well is not a one size fits all. It depends on from product to product what you have in your facilities. I also like to thank everybody for the participation. It's a great participation. If you have questions and you want to, please reach out to us and do that. And thank you very much, everybody. Have a blessed weekend. Be safe out there. And we hope we can meet again in the near future. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Resh, for trusting me so much.
I think you did a fantastic job, Quade. I think you really
Likewise.
did a fantastic job simplifying what really is a complex set of regulations for everyone that joined us online. So I think hats off to you, Quade. Thank you so much. I think you made everyone's afternoon a lot easier with how you broke it down practically. But as you said, Quade, it is
Mm,
difficult. There's no two ways around it. There's plenty of variables, and money is going to have to be spent whether one likes it or not. So I think those are the key takeaways as well. So, Quade, fantastic job. Thank you. I look forward to doing a lot more of these with you going forward as well.
okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys. Take care. And as I said, have a blessed weekend. Thank you very much. We will close this webinar. Thank you.